Price hikes today, 7 big bill charges. Tax changes are to go up from today as well. We're talking about car tax here. We're talking about council tax. And then on top of that, we've got what?
Water, energy, broadband, stamp duty, business rates, all going up from today. And I'm afraid it's no April Fool.
Well, let's get the views now of Michael Simmons. Michael is the economics editor for The Spectator. I mean, this is what we all feel. This is what our viewers and listeners feel. Michael, are we imagining it, or is it there? Is it happening?
Well, today is actually the truth. You were talking when you were doing the headlines about Rachel Reeves claiming that we're going to be £500 better off, and she got that out of some nonsense from the Office for Budget Responsibility's report into her spring statement, based on what living standards are going to be in 2029 versus what they thought they were going to be last October. And that's nonsense for what people actually feel in their pockets. You know, today they're seeing these 7 bills: utilities, broadband, their council tax, problems in employment brought about by national insurance rises. That's what people are, actually going to feel. And it's going to be the poorest that feel it most, because people on the lower end of the income scale tend to spend more of their income on housing, on food, in heating. So yeah, it's real. It's not made up.
Well, talking about housing, also stamp duty changes come into effect today. Can you talk us through those?
Yep, so stamp duty has this sort of threshold where if a property is below a certain price, then you just don't pay stamp duty at all. That's been cut in half today if you're already a homeowner and you're buying a second home or you're relocating, and it's been reduced as well for first-time buyers. And can I say, stamp duty is probably the stupidest tax we have.
It's another mean-stealing tax. And there's so many areas in Northern Ireland where it doesn't apply, but it is going to apply from today, and in England as well. I mean, as you say, the stupidest tax. If you look at it, it's not so much that it's stupid, that it's a lie.
Yep, well, but it's the harm it does to so many parts of our economy. It discourages people from moving house, from downsizing, because you've got to pay this transaction tax every single time. And part of the housing crisis is not just a growing population and that we're not building enough houses, but it's that people are not moving enough. And that actually affects the economy in a wider sense, because if you find it harder to move because you don't want to pay this tax, who would? Then you're less likely to move for your job, and it sort of tightens up the labour market as well. So I think it's a really silly tax that, OK, yes, brings in the money, but it's the wider effects on all of us probably outweigh the good it does.
As you say, 7 bills going up, tax changes as well coming into effect today. How is this going to impact the wider economy, I think?
Well, I think the real effects on the economy are not going to be so much the bills, which, yes, they'll stop people spending because obviously more of their income is going to go on these increased costs. I think that the real problems will come when this £25 billion hike on employers' national insurance contribution comes into play on Sunday. Now, you might think, oh, great, employers are going to pay that. But what are employers going to do? They're going to pass it on either to customers. It's going to cost billions in price rises. But more worryingly, they're just going to stop hiring people, or even they're going to make people redundant. And again, it's been shown that the people who are most likely to be affected by this are the people on the lowest earnings, on minimum wage.
Rachel Reeves is not stupid, or then again, maybe she is stupid. Because she knows this, she knew this would happen. Social commentator Mike Parry joins the conversation right now. Are you feeling worse off, Mike?
Well, let's dwell on the property market, OK? Because I'm a property investor. And I heard this morning that in Oxfordshire, people who've got second homes, and I've got a second home, I've had a second home for 20 years, are now going to be charged a 100% extra on their council tax bill because it's a second home. This has already happened in Wales and parts of the southwest. Now, the reason I bring this up is people will say, oh, poor old Mike Parry moaning about a 100% increase in the council tax on his second home. But don't you understand the wealth I bring to the community where I have my second home? And I see this as another act of malice from a Labour government who want to attack people who've done well in life through taxes, who want to attack aspirational parents by trying to get rid of private schools, and who want to seem to attack anybody who gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go and start their own business and earn lots of money. And this is another one. This is an act of terrible malice. And I can tell you it will backfire again, because I know people have sold up their second homes and refused to pay the 100% council tax increase. And I don't blame them. And I'm thinking that way as well. But when I'm down in the area where I've got my second home, I use the restaurants, I use local services, I have a cleaning lady, I'm injecting money into the economy. But once again, I think Rachel Reeves and this Labour government are economically illiterate in that they can't see if you leave more money in people's pockets, those people with second homes wouldn't have to pay double council tax. They could spend it on local services.
Yeah. Michael, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think it's just another example of things that are sort of clogging up the economy, making it harder, for us to do things. Obviously, we have this, fiscal crisis that Rachel Reeves escaped from last week, and part of that was raising taxes. But when you take all these taxes together, our tax burden, so that the total amount that we're paying in taxes as a share of GDP is going to be at its highest level that it's been since after the war.
I would love to see a graphic that shows two bins. One is, a red bin full of the money they're taking off us. Now there's a green bin, and that's the money we're generating, the money that we're making, and Mike's talking about in his local community there and how he's spending and supporting restaurants and that sort of thing. And I tell you, the trouble with politicians is they all know how to take your money away, but not one of them know how to create it. The only thing I can think of at the minute is something like fracking, which no one will go for. You think, well, how else are you going to make money for the country? How else are you going to do this? We're going to have to just bite the bullet on this one and do some fracking. What ways would you use taxes to generate money, and where would you cut it? I mean, I think value-added tax is theft as well. I think, you buy something and then you've got to pay value-added. Why? What? It's stupid.
Well, it just makes so much money for us. The main taxes, income tax, value-added tax, they make so much money for us, and that's not something that they're going to cut. But ultimately, if we want the country to grow, if we want people to invest in this country, it's got to be an attractive place, and that's not the case when the tax burden, as we say, is at record highs.
What is the case for the tax burden, Mike? How would you sum it up? What do you think needs to be done? Not that anybody's going to listen to you; they're not going to listen to you. But we seem to be going to hell in a handcart.
We are going to hell in a handcart. You've got to cut taxes and put money back into people's pockets. VAT, by the way, was just a sop to Europe. Edward Heath wanted to get us into Europe, and in Europe, they love piling taxes on everything, including one called VAT, which we never had in this country. Suddenly, we adopted that. And you're absolutely right, Eamon. It's just stealing more money off people for no apparent reason. The way that you make an economy work, I wish people would buy a copy of Mrs. Thatcher's autobiography and just read it, because it proves that if you leave the money in people's pockets, if you make the state smaller, if you have less burdensome rules on society will prosper and flourish. And Nigel Lawson, the greatest post-war chancellor, reduced the highest rate of tax, which was 80%, down to under 40%. And that meant we became the most buoyant economy in Europe. We were the most buoyant economy in the G7 before the last election. And yesterday, a report said it was even better than we thought under Rishi Sunak. But the burdensome toll of red tape and taxes now means we are the sick man of Europe again.
Mike, I look a lot on Instagram and see things, and there's a lot of Thatcher speeches which are currently being revived. About her views on Europe, about her views on taxes, about her views on governmental control over the individual, whatever. And I must admit, they're all very current, very topical issues today, even though this was 40 years ago.
Yes, absolutely. But you've got to remember, Mrs. Thatcher, who was in favour of Europe when it started, saw it as a trading bloc. We didn't expect the Europeans to try to punish us if we didn't want to do something they did. But it's moved from a trading bloc into a huge political institution. And France and Germany wanted to lead us and expected us to fall into line. And of course, the Americans have found out what Europe's all about. Very, very high taxing institution, very, very high regulation, and sitting back and letting America defend them while all the money in the European bloc is given out on wasteful welfare payments and gathered in by high taxes. It just doesn't work. And that's, again, I keep saying this, economic illiteracy is rife in this country. Neither Keir Starmer, who, remember, is a human rights lawyer posing as a prime minister, neither he nor Rachel Reeves have a clue about how you make a country flourish through the economy. No.
Well, thanks for your views.